They called it the Maida Escarpment, but to the American soldiers who were ordered to take it, the name didn't matter. All they knew was that it rose nearly 500 feet into the air, jagged, fortified, and saturated with death. To them it became simply Hacksaw Ridge. The year was 1945. Okinawa, the last stepping stone before the Japanese mainland. Capturing the island meant thousands of American lives, but failing to take it would mean even more in the final. Invasion of Japan. To the men of the 96th Infantry Division. Dead eyes, this was just another mission. But what they would face here would be unlike anything they had seen before in the Pacific. Hacksaw Ridge wasn't just a hill. It was a fortress, a natural wall reinforced by man. It stretched for nearly 4,000 yards across the Okinawan landscape, forming a natural barricade in Japan's second defensive line. Cliffs, narrow ridges, and jagged coral shelves made any approach a nightmare, and the Japanese knew it. What the Americans didn't know, not yet, was that inside the ridge was a labyrinth. Tunnels, bunkers, cave systems connected by winding paths. Some caverns were big enough to hold hundreds of soldiers. There were command centers, supply depots, and sniper nests buried into the rock. And most terrifying of all, the Japanese had sight lines across the entire American advance. Every movement, every tank, every unit, they could see it all. They called it an underground battleship, and the Americans were walking straight into its guns. On April 25th, Brigadier General Claudius Easley, the Assistant Division Commander, looked up at the sheer face of Hacksaw Ridge. He gave the order, "Destroy it." Artillery was brought up. Over 1,600 shells rained down on the escarpment. Aircraft bombarded it from the sky. Colonel Michael Halloran's cannon company fired shell after shell at every suspected enemy position. The ground shook. The sky turned black, and when the smoke cleared, the ridge was still there. The next day, April 26th, Company G of the 381st Infantry Regiment began their approach. There was no resistance at first. It felt almost too easy. Then, as they reached the summit, everything exploded. Machine guns from hidden pillboxes erupted with fire. Within minutes, 18 Americans were hit. Chaos spread across the ridgeline. Soldiers dropped for cover, screaming over the radio for support. They had stepped directly into the heart of the trap. Company F, attacking from the east near Needle Rock, tried to climb the escarpment. The first 3 men to reach the top were immediately cut down by enemy fire. The Japanese were dug in, hidden, and waiting. Company E found a narrow path up the slope, climbing under cover of darkness and smoke. As they reached the top, they were spotted. A heavy machine gun opened up, followed by mortar. The air was thick with dust and steel. Private First Class William Reeder, once a pro baseball player, saw Japanese mortar firing and reacted. With the calm of a man under pressure, he hurled grenade after grenade with deadly precision. Like a pitcher in the World Series, but this time the stakes were far higher. Still, the enemy responded. A wave of Japanese soldiers charged. Staff Sergeant Lee Moore, normally a flamethrower operator, grabbed a bar and fired from the hip, cutting down attackers one after another. Then, ignoring orders to fall back, he climbed to the top of Needle Rock and attacked the cave himself, burning out the defenders with his flamethrower. He would later receive the Distinguished Service Cross, but these were small victories in a much larger storm. To the west, Colonel Edwin Mays, 383rd Infantry Regiment, reached Hills 150 and 152. They crested the hills and realized with horror that the ridgelines beyond were swarming with Japanese troops. Open terrain, hundreds of enemy soldiers, a perfect kill zone. The Americans opened fire. bars, M1 Garans. Machine guns. The hills became killing fields. Tanks and flamethrowers advanced. The 713th Tank Battalion unleashed sheets of fire into the enemy lines. Some defenders tried to flee. Many didn't make it. Lieutenant General Matsuru Ushijima, the Japanese commander, was alarmed. He ordered his 62nd Division to send all available reserves to Maeda. Hold the line. Prevent collapse at any cost. The 24th Division was called in to reinforce. The Japanese knew what Hacksaw meant. Lose it, and southern Okinawa would fall. On April 27th, the Deidais renewed their assault. The 1st Battalion of the 381st Infantry moved between the hills, supported by tanks and flamethrowers. The battle raged for hours. American armor crawled forward Shermans, belching fire into pillboxes. Infantry followed, clearing caves with grenades and bayonets. Every position taken came at a cost. The deeper they moved, the fiercer the resistance became. Captain George Wilcox, Jr., leading Company E, reached a hill near Maeda village. As his men advanced, the ridge erupted again. Dozens of hidden machine guns opened fire. Trapped in open terrain, 2 soldiers were killed and 7 wounded in moments. Only a well-placed smoke screen allowed the company to withdraw. Elsewhere, 2 soldiers, Privates Alvin Brewer and Gordon Lundman, were ordered to hold position on the crest. That night, 50 Japanese soldiers tried to infiltrate the lines. For hours, the 2 Americans held them off, rolling grenades down the slope, firing at shadows. When it was over, they had killed 22 enemy soldiers. Both survived. Hand-to-hand fighting broke out. Grenades, knives, and trenching tools. Even sharp coral was used as weapons. It was primal. Up close, personal, American. Intelligence was finally beginning to understand the scope of the problem. Captain Louis Reuter, Jr., of the 381st Infantry, made a discovery that changed everything. While scouting the northern face of Hacksaw, he and 2 enlisted men entered a cave. It was empty at first. As they moved deeper, they found hidden paths and shafts leading down into the ridge itself. Then came the shock. They reached an observation post abandoned, but fully equipped. Through a telescope, Reuter could see everything the Americans had fought through for the last several days. The entire valley, the landing beaches, the movements of their divisions. They weren't attacking a hill. They were fighting an enemy buried inside a mountain, watching their every move. Reuter's words spread fast through command. We're squatting on the lid of a vast fortress, and we didn't know it. The Japanese had planned this for years. Fortifications in depth, layers of fallback positions, underground command centers. It was brilliant and deadly. Artillery, almost useless. Bombs, devastating to the surface, but the real danger was below. By April 28th, reinforcements were arriving. The 77th Infantry Division, the Statue of Liberty Division, landed on Okinawa and prepared to relieve the battered 96th. Their first target, the apartment house, a concrete school turned bunker. Led by 1st Lieutenant Albert Strand, Company K attacked. Within minutes, the company was nearly wiped out, reduced to just 24 survivors. The division began combining Companies K and I were merged into a single understrength unit. The toll was immense, and still the Japanese held. On April 29th, the enemy struck back. A Japanese counterattack slammed into the 383rd Infantry's front lines. Grenades, spears. A platoon of 30G was reduced to 9 survivors. Tanks and flamethrowers held the line, but the cost was growing. At Hill 138, Company L met fierce resistance. A Japanese machine gun dominated the summit. PFC, Gabriel Chavez charged it with a grenade. He destroyed the gun and was killed in the blast. He was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Even Shuri Castle, the suspected Japanese HQ, came under American fire for the first time. Captain Willard Ballinger, commanding Company F, faced a grim decision. His men couldn't dig foxholes into the coral, so he ordered them to climb on top of boulders instead. That night, when the Japanese attacked the empty holes, Ballinger's men were waiting above them. The Japanese were cut down in seconds. It was bold. It was desperate. But it worked. By April 30th, the American assault on Hacksaw Ridge had slowed to a crawl. Every inch of ground gained was soaked in blood. The 96th Infantry Division was exhausted, its ranks thinned by relentless attacks and nearly impenetrable defenses to keep the pressure on. General Easley authorized a risky maneuver, a flanking movement through the neighboring sector of the 27th Infantry Division. The goal? Get behind the ridge and strike from the rear. Company K of the 381st Infantry Regiment moved through heavy fire to attack a large, fortified school building the soldiers called the Apartment House. It was a strong point south of the ridge, reinforced with concrete and packed with Japanese troops. First Lieutenant Albert Strand led the charge. Within moments, Company K was shredded. Machine gun fire, mortar, grenades. It was a death trap. Out of an original company of over 150 men, only 24 made it out. Across the front, entire companies were being merged into half-strength units. Ammunition was low. Men were sleeping in shallow holes hacked into coral. Rain soaked everything. Japanese snipers picked off soldiers who moved even a foot from cover, and yet the Americans kept coming. April 29th brought a fierce Japanese counterattack. Major George Buckland's 2nd Battalion, 383rd Infantry, came under assault by enemy soldiers armed with grenades, rifles, and even spears. One platoon of 30 men was nearly wiped out. Only 9 were left standing when the smoke cleared. American tanks and flamethrowers were rushed forward. They beat back the attack, but the cost was enormous. At Hill 138, hand-to-hand fighting erupted again. Grenades, bayonets. At one position, a Japanese machine gun dominated the crest, cutting down any approach. Private First Class Gabriel Chavez charged the gun alone with a grenade in hand. He destroyed the position and himself in the process. His sacrifice saved his unit and earned him the Distinguished Service Cross. Meanwhile, Captain Ballinger of Company F faced an impossible situation. His men couldn't dig foxholes into the coral ground, but he knew a counterattack was coming that night. Thinking quickly, he ordered his men to climb on top of the boulders instead of hiding behind them. That night, the Japanese attacked, rushing the empty foxholes, expecting a slaughter. But they walked straight into American firepower. Ballinger's gamble worked. His company survived, and he was awarded the Silver Star. By now, the 381st Infantry Regiment was down to skeleton strength. Replacements were being thrown directly into front-line foxholes with little training. Many were still teenagers. Relief finally came with the arrival of the 77th Infantry Division veterans from battles in Guam and Leyte. They were tough, battle-hardened, and ready for the next phase of the fight. On April 29th, the 307th Infantry Regiment of the 77th Division arrived at Hacksaw. Their orders: take the ridge no matter the cost. Lieutenant Colonel Gerald Cooney's 1st Battalion led the assault. Companies A and B used ladders and ropes to scale the sheer cliff face. Once on top, they could see the entire plateau stretching before them. It looked peaceful, quiet, Then, as always, came the ambush. Japanese troops emerged from hidden bunkers, pillboxes, and trenches. Grenades flew. Mortar exploded. Sniper fire rained down from every direction. The G's returned fire, scrambling for cover among the coral rocks. They had barely secured a foothold on the ridge before they were forced to dig in, or die trying. The 3rd Battalion couldn't even make it to the top. Company K and L were pinned down by machine guns on the reverse slope, unable to advance. Dozens were wounded or killed trying to climb. April 30th brought a brutal attempt to break the deadlock. Company B managed to blow the roof off one of the fortified pillboxes using satchel charges. Under covering mortar fire, a single demolition soldier dragged his explosives up the cliff, tossed them into the opening, and destroyed the enemy inside. It was one small victory, but it inspired others to follow. But supply was still a nightmare. Food, water, and ammunition had to be hauled up manually over 300 yards of steep cliff at a 30-degree incline. Even evacuating the wounded was nearly impossible. During the night, the Japanese launched another savage counterattack. They penetrated the Company B area, separating a platoon and flanking the Americans. Mortar, grenades, and close-quarters fighting erupted across the ridge. Dozens of Americans were injured or killed. Others were forced to jump off the cliff to escape the encirclement. One soldier recalled tossing a grenade at a Japanese soldier, only for it to roll back down the slope toward him. He caught it, threw it again, and hoped for the best. It worked. Meanwhile, Company I was maneuvering around the ridge to attack from the rear. They discovered that the enemy stronghold wasn't just a network of caves, it was a vertical fortress. Some caves were 3 stories deep. They threw satchel charges inside. The explosions opened up hidden levels below each, filled with enemy fighters. They poured gasoline into the openings and set them alight. Smoke billowed from dozens of vents along the ridge. The Japanese screamed as they burned. But many still refused to surrender. This was no longer a military campaign. It was a war of attrition, and both sides knew it. By May 1st, the Americans had established a fragile foothold on top of Hacksaw Ridge. Cargo nets and ladders had been set up to allow troops to resupply and evacuate the wounded more efficiently. But the fighting was far from over. That night, the Japanese counterattacked again. They infiltrated the lines, cutting off units and striking hard. Company B was forced to abandon their position along the cliff. Mortar rained down and machine guns swept the ridgeline. Many soldiers had to slide or jump 40 feet down to safety, but in the chaos, one man stayed behind, Private First Class Desmond Doss, a combat medic and devout Seventh-day Adventist who refused to carry a weapon, remained on the ridge while the rest of his unit pulled back, alone. Under fire, he began treating the wounded. Throughout the night, he dragged soldier after soldier to the edge of the cliff, lowering them down using ropes. One by one, he saved 75 men, and he never picked up a rifle. In the days that followed, Doss continued his acts of heroism. He ran through enemy territory to rescue the wounded. He treated men under artillery fire. He was hit by shrapnel, treated himself, and waited 5 hours for a stretcher. When a litter team finally arrived, they found him helping another man. He gave up his own stretcher again. Later, he was wounded again by a sniper. He fashioned a splint from a rifle stock and crawled over 300 yards to safety. For his actions, Desmond Doss would become the first conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor. Back on the ridge, the 307th Infantry launched another final assault. On May 3rd, Companies A and C lined up at the edge of Hacksaw. armed with crates of grenades, satchel charges, and tanks of gasoline. They bombarded the ridge for 20 minutes, then charged. They cleared the plateau foot by foot, blowing open caves and bunkers, burning out sniper holes, and sealing tunnel entrances. At the same time, Company I advanced up the left rear of the ridge. Their mission: cut off the Japanese escape routes. The enemy held firm. A massive cave system on the reverse slope served as a central command post, hospital, and ammo depot. It had multiple exits, some over 60 yards long, and was defended by suicide squads. The Americans tried everything: satchel charges, flamethrowers, explosives. Nothing collapsed the cave. Eventually, they simply blew the entrances shut and moved on. On May 4th, General Oshijima, under pressure from General Cho, launched a last-ditch counterattack. The goal was simple: break the American line at Hacksaw and turn the tide. Thousands of Japanese infantry, tanks, engineers, and artillery were thrown into the assault. But they never made it. American artillery, machine guns, and mortar decimated them. At one point, 9 light tanks supported the attack. Only 2 made it to the front. By dawn, the attack had failed. The Japanese were broken, and Hacksaw Ridge was finally in American hands. The cost was staggering. Over 7,000 Japanese were killed defending the ridge. The 96th and 77th Infantry Divisions suffered thousands of casualties. Companies were reduced to dozens. Medics ran out of morphine. Flamethrowers ran out of fuel. But the line held. In the final days of the assault, radio transmissions captured a chilling reality. A Japanese soldier wrote in his diary, "I have my doubts this attack will succeed, but I will fight fiercely, with the thought in mind that this war for the empire will last 100 years. For many, it would end in fire and stone, buried beneath the weight of Hacksaw Ridge." Thanks for watching this episode. If you found this story powerful or learned something new, consider subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. It helps us keep history alive, one story at a time.